Terry Rozier is back. What does it mean for the long term with Charlotte? Plus, when are we going to get some of these other backcourt players returning? We'll talk about all that today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast. That includes YouTube, by the way. I'm Walker Mail. You can find me on WFNZ. That's during the middays. I'm alongside Wes Bryan, and you can catch me 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Also, I was doing a depressing Carolina Panthers postgame show today, so sometimes I'm on that as well. You can also check out Doug on everyhornetsboxscore.com, where he has all the write-ups, all of the coverage about the Charlotte Hornets, where it's not exactly all that much more happy in tone either. It's fun being a Charlotte sports fan, Doug. Yay. Go us.
Well, I mean, at least with the Hornets, you have a few like bright future pieces. Like I think there's a little bit more hope in Charlotte Hornets land than there is in Panther land, because there's still so many question marks with the Panthers,
So we'll start off there. So we can talk about the overall positive feelings. Maybe we'll get to that in just a moment. I do want to focus on Terry, though, because So the Hornets over the weekend, they drop both of their games. They get just absolutely destroyed against the Memphis Grizzlies. That game was over as soon as the ball was in the air for tip. They lost the first quarter big. They lost the second quarter. They lost the third quarter. It was only until the fourth quarter the Charlotte Hornets scored 30 and eventually won it, but they got beat 130-99. I saw you tweet out, Doug, that it had a chance to get historically bad against Memphis at the beginning of that game.
Well, I thought it was, Memphis has the record for largest margin of victory. They did that against an Oklahoma City Thunder team that was just miserable and trying to tank. And I believe the Memphis Grizzlies also own like one of the other top 5 margin of victory against the Hornets. This is not unusual. I didn't expect it to get that bad. I mean, I didn't think they really had a shot to win. I thought it would have been a miracle had they won, but it didn't need to be that bad. And I think Clifford sort of communicated that in the presser afterwards, that he was not pleased with the effort. I mean, honestly, it looked like the players didn't believe that they had even a shot. And that's, fans one thing, we can look at a game and say, all right, well, I don't really think statistically they have what it's going to take to win this game, but players can't look at it like that. They got to go out there. It doesn't matter who you're missing. You got to go out there and fight like you can win. And they weren't doing that.
Well, we were a little bit in upside down land with James Bouknight having the only nice shooting night against Grizzlies with 14 points. And so everybody else was bad. We had the first real bad PJ game where his shot wasn't falling. And so, look, awful game. I mean, we can get to that, but let's talk about something that happened a little bit more recently, which was the Brooklyn Nets contest. They were in the Spectrum Center. That took place on Saturday night. PJ got his shot falling a little bit more, but really the story is Terry Rozier returning to the lineup for the first time since he was out with that ankle sprain. And then we all saw the questionable designation. We all had the eyeball emojis out and about in the Twitter sphere. Eventually he would be available, played 36 minutes. There was no holding him back. He played more minutes than anybody in this game for the Charlotte Hornets. Scored 25 points, was 6 of 14 from three-point land, 9 of 24 overall, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, did have 4 turnovers, but overall looked very good and was their source of offense alongside a nice Kelly Oubre shooting performance from the outside, 4 of 11. So not fantastic, but he was also contributing. PJ Washington doing so as well to keep them in this game. Still, the Hornets offense, it's struggled really for quite a while now, ever since Gordon Hayward went out. I'm not saying it's because of that, but since he's gone out, that's when the offense has looked really bad. I'm just glad they got Terry back for this game, Doug, because he certainly gave them a shot to win it.
Well, and he does it really at the beginning of these quarters, right? I mean, like first play, Terry's getting to the rim and then he's knocking down 3-point shots, at least at the beginning of that fourth quarter. He was helping to extend that lead that unfortunately, I mean, they had a 12-point lead with 6 to go, and it gets erased very quickly by really Kevin Durant and like some backup singers. Like it wasn't like they didn't have anybody else on the floor that I had seen play a ton. So except Seth Curry, I guess. But yeah, so it was a disappointing way to finish. But yeah, going to Terry, I guess I'm glad in a sense that they held him out for so long because he looks 100%. Like he didn't look limited in any way. He was moving around very good, and he's adding an element that the Hornets have been missing over the past couple of games, and that's 3-point shooting. They only had 8 3-point makes against Memphis. They only had 7 against Chicago. They did have 14 against Sacramento. They just didn't have enough defense in that one. But the 3-point shooting has been an absolute struggle for the Hornets over the past couple of games. They still only shoot 33%, but the important thing is they put up 42 of them. Like, you got to have those attempts in the modern NBA in order to keep pace with some of these teams. Like, the offense has got a ways to go to improve, but that's a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm glad that they held Terry out as much as they did. If this was the time that we're going to get 100% Terry Rozier, and he's not returning and helping you beat the Memphis Grizzlies. I mean, maybe against the Kings, but at the end, the Kings looked like the better basketball team in the second half. And so, Terry Rozier, he comes back. Now we're just really waiting on LaMelo Ball. We're waiting on Cody Martin. Now we're waiting on Gordon Hayward. So, they need some backcourt help. They still need that, even with Terry Rozier coming back.
Yeah, I mean, look, and Terry Rozier was really fantastic in moments. He had 25 points in this game. I mean, he was a big part of them even being in this game, but he was also the player that took the responsibility for the loss. He had a couple of opportunities to knock down some shots, and he didn't, and he was passing to players, passing these grenades off to players with like 2 on the shot clock. Decision-making down the stretch as they lost that lead. And, credit to Terry, after the game, he goes and he says, I'm one of the leaders on this team. I essentially failed the team in this one. And so, I love that he's stepping up. And obviously, you wanted a different result in this one because this one felt like winnable, even with Kevin, even versus Kevin Durant. The Nets were sort of, it seemed like they were almost sacrificing this game, and the Hornets decided not to take it. And so much of it, it wasn't. I mean, I appreciate Terry taking the blame, but I don't think a lot of it was his fault.
No,
honestly.
yeah. No, that seems like the cliche leader speak, which is totally fine. It's great. Actually, I love it. Take responsibility, but you didn't really need to take responsibility. Terry coming back from injury, allowing this team a shot at least before Kevin Durant did the Durant-like thing, and the Brooklyn Nets end up winning against a depleted roster. And by the way, we also have to talk about Dennis Smith Jr. He is questionable for this game tonight against the Washington Wizards because, yep, you guessed it, another ankle injury, because that's what's happening. This was a thing last year too, by the way. I mean, maybe it was a year and a half ago. I just remember when the vaccine was coming out, I made the joke on Twitter about how, hey, is there a vaccine for left ankle sprains? Because Charlotte would like that as well. And it seems like that's prevalent once again with the Charlotte Hornets. Don't get it, man, but this is what it is. Like, this has been something that has plagued the Charlotte Hornets for the last couple of seasons, it seems like.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could just be rotten luck. Could it be some kind of training issue, whether it's with the individual players and who they're training with and some of the stuff that they're doing, not getting enough support around the ankle, that's leading to all of these, something within the org that they may look at in the summer and go, hey, why are, this is a tremendous number of ankle injuries. Although, honestly, it feels like, some of these like stress kind of injuries, they're obviously like fluky in that a lot of them happen when you step on a foot, like LaMelo did against Washington in the preseason. Like, he steps on a foot, that's tough. You turn your ankle, but at the same time, you can do that. Like, DSJ's listed as questionable, so he's not immediately out. It's like, what's leading to all of these like more severe ankle sprains? And it's happening across the league. And, I think it's something to kind of pay attention to, and they're paying attention to it in other sports right now too, like baseball. All these guys and their elbows blowing up because, and baseball's made adjustments in terms of pitch count and being more strict with not letting guys complete games and stuff like that, because I think there's more of an awareness now of like players that play one sport their entire lives and they're on the AAU circuit and they're playing like 4 games in one day, and then all of a sudden they have so much more mileage on them than players in the past, and we're just seeing more of these stress type injuries. I think it's something that the NBA has to monitor as well and figure out a way that they can keep players on the floor.
Okay, yeah, hopefully they can come back. The Hornets have endured enough injuries. Hopefully it's not anything that keeps Dennis Smith Jr. out longer. Same with Gordon, same with LaMelo, because I still think with the context included, we can view this season as a positive to some degree with the way they've been playing. We can make that argument a little bit later on. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
What's behind the 4-game losing streak for the Charlotte Hornets, and even specifically, why did they lose against the Brooklyn Nets? We'll get to that in just a moment. Not before we talk about Rocket Money. Are you wasting your money on subscriptions? 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about. Maybe for you, it's an unused Amazon Prime account or a Hulu account that never gets streamed. There's this great app, though, that I use that helps me track all my expenses, and that's because that I needed to cancel some of my subscriptions, and so because of Rocket Money, I no longer have to waste money on some of those subscriptions I don't even use. It's Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill. The app shows all of your subscriptions in one place and cancels what you don't want for you specifically. Rocket Money can even find subscriptions you didn't know you were paying for. You may even find out you've been double charged for a subscription. To cancel a subscription, all you have to do is press cancel, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. So you don't have to deal with the hassle of saying, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Okay, are you sure you're not a robot? No, just press cancel on Rocket Money and you'll be good to go. Although if you are a robot, you can also use Rocket Money too. If you just have so many if you don't have so many robot subscriptions, that's fine as well. Cancel unnecessary subscriptions with Rocket Money today. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon. I just don't want to be something that is blocking robots from doing this as well. Seriously, it could save you hundreds per year. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Let's do whatever else we have in store. Coming up next, Locked On Hornets.
Is Locked On Hornets.
I know a lot about the weight room. I know a ton about the weight. I don't lift a lot of weights, but I do kind of stand around the weight room. Are you using that? You're good? Okay, good. Okay,
yeah.
Good. And I stand around the weight room a lot.
Do you have the high socks and the headband on with your hair tied back?
Oh yeah, big like white tube socks for sure. Yeah. Headband. Yeah, I've got it all. I've got these headphones right here that you see me wearing on YouTube right now. I take these into the gym. It's about looking professional. You got to look the part, right? Dress for the job that you want. That's how I feel about how I am in the weight room.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Thanks for making Locked On Hornets your first listen today. Make your next listen Locked On Sports today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Doug, if I were to go to everyhornetsboxscore.com and find you writing about this game against the Brooklyn Nets, what would I see as to why they eventually dropped this one against Brooklyn late?
Well, it's interesting you ask that, Walker, because if you went to everyhornetsboxscore.com, you actually wouldn't find me writing about this game. I called in a sub, David Walker, a friend of this show.
I did see that. That's right.
Yeah. So David actually did the notebook for this game, so go check that out. You
hear that, Rod, by the way? It's David Walker. It's not Walker Mail. We're different people. Even if we look alike, all of us look alike. It was a different person. That's for you, Rod Morrow, sir. Anyways, just wanted to call him out.
Okay, yeah,
Love you,
wow,
Rod.
yeah. Really.
But know who I am.
I think, if you went to the notebook, you're going to really see two things that really led to this defeat. I think turnovers in the second quarter specifically. They had an 8-turnover second quarter. The turnovers have been an issue really throughout this 4-game, felt like 14, but 4-game losing streak. They had 20 against Sacramento. They had 16 against Chicago. They had 18 against Memphis, and they had 15 total. But it's a couple of things too. It's massive turnover numbers in one particular quarter that sets them back severely, and it's bad execution, bad discipline, bad turnovers in crunch time, and that bit them in this one as well. So just bad screens, driving into defenses with really no plan, and you end up getting stripped of the ball. I mean, there was one sequence in the second quarter where they turned it over like 4 straight times. It's part excusable in the sense that you are really depending a lot on James Bouknight, Jalen McDaniels, JT Thor. I mean, they have a ton of responsibility, especially, Bouknight, because DSJ goes down in this game, had a ton more to do with the basketball. And when you give players that don't have a lot of experience more to do with the basketball, this is sort of what you can expect to happen sometimes.
Yeah, this Brooklyn Nets team, no Kyrie Irving because of the 5-game suspension that the NBA handed down to him. So you have Kevin. This is your starting lineup: Kevin Durant, Royce O'Neal, Nick Claxton, Joe Harris, and Edmund Sumner. Edmund Sumner, former Xavier great with Indiana a little bit. You also
I only know him because the Slim Reaper. He always, or they said the Slim Reaper for Kevin Durant, but then he said it like Eric Collins said it when Edmund Sumner's name came up, so I got confused. I'm like, well, the Edmund Sumner, is he also the Slim Reaper?
Well, I was about to say, I've never heard him called that. Maybe I'm mistaken for that as well. But really, the big offensive performances for Brooklyn, it was had by Kevin Durant, and it was also had by Cam Thomas, who went to the free throw line and shot 11 times, hit 10 of those 11 free throw attempts, hit one of his 2 3-point attempts, scored 21 points. And I think Cam Thomas, what you heard about him coming out of college was that his confidence was like so almost overwhelming that it either turned teams off or it turned them on. So it was really polarizing, the interview process for Cam Thomas. And apparently Brooklyn felt comfortable enough, and he had a pretty good one, a good offensive performance in this game against Charlotte. The offense here, Doug, what are you seeing on that end of the floor? Because no Gordon Hayward, right? That was the time, I believe, they scored 18 points apiece when Gordon Hayward is injured and they play the next 2 quarters of that contest against the Kings. Then you have this game against the Grizzlies. They're just not averaging all that much. They go 24, 23, 22, 30 in each of those quarters. Then against Brooklyn, it's 21, 23, 26, 24. So they're just not able to get to a pace where they're on track to score 100. Like, if you can't reach the century mark in the NBA, then it's going to be really tough to win. And so they had a shot against Brooklyn, and they didn't even score 100 points. What are you seeing offensively? I know you talked about it a little bit with Brooklyn, but is that just a matter of getting guys back to help them out, or do you think there's actively something they could be doing a lot better with the group that they have available right now?
Well, I think it's turnovers, it's decision making with the ball. It's setting better screens. There's just little things that I think are disrupting the momentum of the offense, and it's super important when you play as fast as the Charlotte Hornets have decided to play. That's going to produce chaos. It's probably going to produce a few more turnovers than you would normally be okay with. But in those moments when you do have to play in the half court, that's when you have to be disciplined. That's when you have to, not turn the basketball over by driving directly into the teeth of the defense, again, without a plan and then just not protecting that possession. The offense has been bad because they haven't had a ton of talent that can knock down shots. They just don't have enough shot makers. That's number one. Bouknight did have that good game, 7 of 10. He follows it up with 1 of 9. He was 0 of 4 from 3. So they don't have enough shot makers. They don't have enough players that demand attention from the defense. The reason the Nets were able to get back in the game in the fourth quarter and erase that lead was because Kevin Durant demanded so much attention from the Hornets defense that Kevin Durant can pass the ball too, and so he was rotating the basketball. There was a second pass, and then it usually found somebody in the corner, and the Hornets defensively were just not making that sort of second and third effort to close out on shooters. And so, you had Joe Harris in the corner knock down a big 3. You had Watanabe get to the rim and score over Mason Plumlee. I don't know, I know we're talking about offense, but like defensively, there's just like physicality wasn't there at the rim. They couldn't get a rebound at the end of the game. All of these issues are just piling on to each other and resulting in this 4-game losing streak at this point. They need bodies back. I was looking at the numbers plus minus. The Hornets starting lineup, I think maybe other than Orlando, worst in the league. The starting lineup just gets absolutely eviscerated. And this one, it wasn't as bad, but Kelly Oubre was sitting with a minus 14. Plumlee's got a minus 13. It's just bad.
Well, one other thing I'll say real quickly is the fact that their passing is really suffering. I mean, if you go look at the total assists for this team, ever since Gordon Hayward went out, I keep saying Sacramento. I apologize. I mean, Chicago is the last half that he didn't play. But the Hornets against Golden State in that victory, they had 32 assists. Against the Sacramento Kings, yes, they lost, but they were moving the basketball. They had 31. Okay, they averaged 28 last year when they led the league in assists per game. Since Gordon Hayward went out, right, against Chicago, second half, didn't play a lick. Only 22 assists for Charlotte. You look at this game against the Grizzlies, only 22 assists. You look at this game against Brooklyn, only 22 assists. They're consistent, and it's not nearly as much as they were getting when they had a shot to win. The passing, right? Like, it seems simple. He had been kind of tabbed with that connector moniker, did Gordon Hayward. But when you don't have LaMelo, you're going to take a massive hit in the passing department. Then when you didn't have Devontae, I was really worried about that going into last year, but they got it from other areas. Miles Bridges became a lot better passer last season. They don't have that. Cody Martin can handle a little bit. They don't have that, right? So the passing is what's really hurting this team, where you have to run ISO with a lot of guys. So you're relying heavily on Dennis Smith Jr., and then you're relying a little bit on Teo Maladon too when he enters the game.
Well, the problem is complex because there are definitely stretches of the game when they're not moving the basketball enough, when they sort of rely a little bit too much on maybe just like one pass or ISO basketball, okay? There's definitely that. But there's the issue with the assists also comes from the fact that, again, you've got P.J. Washington, Nick Richards, Jalen McDaniels at times with this bad case of the bobbles. They get the basketball, good pass, and they fumble it away. It is just eviscerated that, the momentum from Nick Richards, that start that he had at the beginning of the year when we were all talking about, whoa, like, where did this guy come from? All of that is not entirely gone away. I mean, he had 10 points and 9 rebounds, almost had a double-double in this game in 17 minutes. But certainly not those dominant performances we were seeing early on because he can't hold on to the basketball. So there's that. And then also, in a weird sort of like a paradoxical way, this team sometimes overpasses. And I think they're overpassing because, again, you don't have enough shot makers on the floor. You don't have enough people that are, demanding attention, but also can know. This is something that Clifford said, like knowing when to pass, when to shoot.
Yeah.
Like it's such a huge thing in the NBA, and making sure that those small windows defenses give you, that you take advantage of them. And the Hornets, because of the injuries, haven't been able to really do that effectively.
Well, and we're saying the same thing, except volume does not mean good, right? Even if so, overpassing still means they're not a good passing team right now. Like, the ones that hopefully you're making are very good, and you're having the efficient shot to create for others. And that's just not something that's happening with this team with all of the injuries. If you think about it, it's not like it was really hard to foresee when you miss everybody. Like, think about all of the guys, okay? Like, Terry, who had gotten better. I thought he had been a better point guard this year in the first couple of games that he played compared to other times he had played the one. LaMelo, Cody, Gordon, like, it's really, really going to be tough for these teams, for this roster without those guys to try to create for one another. All right, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Let's take a look at this game tonight against the Washington Wizards. A couple of injuries that the Wizards are dealing with as well. So can the Hornets find a way to get the job done? We'll continue to take a look at how that could be the case coming up next. BetOnline.net is your number one source for betting football and the start of the new basketball season. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and the easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including the MLB, MMA, boxing, you even have golf a part of that. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Hornets Wiz Talk tonight, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Is Locked On Hornets.
I'm glad we have YouTube now for everybody to see just how bulked you are. Can you give us a gun show flash real quick? Yeah.
Oh yeah,
me and you, man. Look at that drape.
That's 100% grade A.
Look, here I am
Arm.
doing it. Look at these noodle arms right here. Look, they just flow.
We got it. Listen. Yep.
Yeah.
If you want chicken wings,
skinny arms.
if you've been starving for some chicken wings, this is the show for you, folks. YouTube.com/chicken wings.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Doug, as you take a look at Washington, they're actually playing as we're recording this episode, getting ready for this next game against the Hornets on Monday night. So the Wizards are going to play Charlotte on the second night of the back-to-back. The Wizards are down right now with 2 minutes left, 11 points. So maybe Memphis goes on to win, which would not be a surprise. You would expect the Grizzlies to take care of business at home against Washington. So if that's the case, then Washington would be 4-6. If not, if they come back, then they'd be a 500 basketball team coming into that matchup. But if they lose, they'd be on a 5-game losing streak at that point. They would not. That's the Hornets record. So going back to the Wizards, if you look had the wrong box score up there, had the wrong schedule as I was looking at it. But they have lost 4 of their last 5. That's what's happened with the Washington Wizards. So they lose to Brooklyn their last time out. They beat Philly 121-111, but before that, they had a 3-game losing streak. So, very similar team here, right? Like we've talked about some of these matchups for the Charlotte Hornets going against franchises in which you will be competing for a play-in spot. Washington, very similar, and I know they're dealing with some injuries as well.
Yeah, no Beal for health and safety protocols. No DeLon Wright, who would have been the backup shooting guard. So they are thin at shooting guard. So they'll, it looks like they're starting against the Grizzlies. They're starting Monte Morris, Porzingis, Avdia, and Kispert would get the start in place for Beal and then Kuzma. And look, they've got some offensive weapons. Obviously, Porzingis can give this Hornets team lots of problems. Kuzma can too. I mean, he's 5 of 10 so far in this game against the Grizzlies. He has been a really efficient player this year for them. And it'll be a challenge, even old Danny Gafford off the bench. You got to watch out for him. He's been able to put up some numbers against the Hornets in the past. It's really going to be about can this Hornets team muster up enough offense. And you have to think they can, because this Wizards team has really just not been playing defense at all over the past couple of games. It's really amazing, because they were good defensively to begin the season, and then it's all sort of fallen apart for the Wizards. They actually, interestingly, they played the Nets the prior night before the Hornets played the Nets, and got lit up in a very similar way to what happened to Charlotte in that fourth quarter, which was they go to double team Kevin, and then Kevin rotates the ball, and then it's shot making from Joe Harris and some of these other players that the Nets were featuring. So, but again, the Hornets don't have that player that can force that double team. So you're going to have to move the basketball and try to move the defense that way. We'll see if the Hornets, if Terry Rozier has enough, certified gamer in him to come up with a victory. I think it'll be close, but I think the Hornets actually have a shot here to do well offensively, which is something they need desperately to do.
Well, the injury report that I saw, it immediately had LaMelo Ball out for this game. So this is not going to be the contest. LaMelo returns. We know
would have been poetic, right? I mean, he goes out against Washington in the preseason, and it wasn't, nothing intentional, nothing dirty about it. I mean, he stepped on a foot driving the basketball, but it would have been nice to have him come back against Washington. Kelly Oubre said after the game against the Nets that, he misses him. He tells him every game, "Hey, I miss you." Kelly,
so do we.
maybe say something else. Maybe say, "Hey, buddy, can you get back out there? We need you. We're dying out there."
No,
a little bit more than I miss you.
Yeah, we miss you too. It's funny. I swear I was thinking that the other day, like just with the way that the offense looks right now, you wish LaMelo Ball was out there, but he's not going to play against Washington. Dennis Smith Jr. is going to be questionable. So if you had to lose Dennis Smith Jr., at least you're getting somebody back with Terry Rozier to help you out. Again, he did have the nice game against Brooklyn. You mentioned the defense for Washington, and you look at the way they've been playing lately. It started against the Pacers, their second time around. So they've played twice this year. It's one of 2 victories for Indiana right now is against Washington, but they've allowed 110 at least in every single one of their last 5 outings. We'll see what happens against Memphis, but they allowed 127 to the Pacers, 112 to Boston, 118 to Philly, 111 the next time against Philly, 128 against Brooklyn. So they're giving up some big time numbers. If there's ever a get right game for the offense, especially with all the bodies that are not on the court for you, maybe it's the Wizards that can help you out in that category.
Well, and something has to give, right? Because the Hornets haven't scored over 110 points since the Saturday Night Fever game when they won against Golden State, when PJ, DSJ, Jalen were all excellent. And, hopefully DSJ can get back out there. He's questionable for the game. So, hopefully that happens because, again, that takes I think that takes the ball out of Bouknight's hands a little bit, which I think is good for Bouknight. Like, I don't think Bouknight handling the basketball, he's not a point guard, and playing him 28 minutes, I just don't think is going to result in good things for the Hornets off. And he makes bad mistakes on the defensive end sometimes too. He had a great block. It's not as if he's incapable, but then he fouls at the end of that third quarter. I mean, just like things that make you go like, what are you doing fouling somebody with the clock ticking down in the third quarter, and you've made a little bit of a run there, and then he fouls and gives up the 3 free throws. So just some kind of mind-numbing stuff that Bouknight has to still work out of the game. Jalen's got to get right. I mean, losing his shooting has really dramatically hurt this Hornets offense. And PJ is kind of come and gone. I think we're learning a lot. If there is like one silver lining, to all of these injuries, it's that you really are learning a good deal about some of these players. Like PJ Washington has improved, but he's not like, I think we're seeing the sort of PJ Washington ceiling. He's not kind of all-star, I can carry the team kind of level. That's what Terry Rozier is, and that's the kind of impact you saw when he returned. He can carry this offense really by himself at times. I think we're learning stuff about Jalen McDaniels. I think we're learning about James Bouknight, JT Thor. I mean, it's been a terrible couple of games for the More Thor movement. I mean, they're repossessing the furniture in the headquarters. We're hanging on. We're
taking out a second mortgage. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. We're still collecting dues. I'm not ready to return anybody's money yet. But in fact, we need a lot. We need a lot to keep the lights on, because the More Thor movement is really damaged right now. But we're not giving up.
Yeah, I mean, so as far as us learning, I think you got a nice jolt from some of those players with the absences, right? Like, Jalen was never going to shoot 75% from three. I was hoping it wouldn't come right back on down to the mean this fast, just because the 3-point shot, it's just not working for him right now. I still think what Jalen is doing in the other areas is really helping, just as far as like the running and the hustle, but the 3-point shot's not working. And he's not without some of his mistakes for sure. And then PJ had the bad game against Memphis where he couldn't hit. Like that was an awful shooting night for PJ. Unfortunate too that so much of it was within 2-point range. Like the fact that he was missing a lot of 2-point shots as well. So
well, listen, you got to get LaMelo and Gordon back as soon as possible, because I can't deal with much more of Point Plumlee. Like, I mean, there are some things that in little small doses, and that's really, this goes for Bouknight and Jalen too. I mean, in small doses, they can really be effective players. Like Plumlee has some abilities that not all people his size have, on the offensive end. But the problem is that there's just too much of that. It's too much because you don't have a ton of ball handlers. They have ceded some of that responsibility to Mason Plumlee, and he's another guy who goes out there and makes these slap fouls that you're just like, what? Why are you getting the other team closer to the bonus? They're just like ticky-tack, silly fouls. So I think he's got to shoulder some blame too. And honestly, I look back at that Nets loss, and I think Clifford's got to take a little bit of that one too. He did take some blame for the Orlando loss, just not having them prepared for that starting lineup that absolutely blitzed the Hornets in or against Orlando. And I think he's got to take some blame for this Brooklyn loss too. I mean, obviously, like, he can't do much. I mean, there's working on this turnover issue. They're working on some of the fouling issues that they have. But also, like, there were periods in this game where I felt like, there just wasn't enough offense on the floor. I mean, this PJ plus the bench lineup is not going to get it done. It's just not. Like, PJ, again, that goes back to what I said. Like, PJ is not a player yet. Maybe he just turns into one someday, but he's not a player yet that can really carry the offensive load for the team. He's done it in moments, but over the course of the season, I think you see sort of the larger picture, which is like he's not somebody that can do that consistently. Mm-hmm. And so, when you're throwing him out there with Richards, Thor, or putting him out there with Plumlee and Thor and Bouknight, it's just not enough offense on the floor, unfortunately.
Yeah, when you get excited about Jalen and PJ doing a lot more ISO stuff and just putting the ball on the floor and doing more things, that just makes them more dangerous in the role they're designed to play. It doesn't mean, okay, now we can just run a whole bunch of ISO ball between those guys and they can just score. It means now they can put the ball on the deck as a third, fourth option, maybe second if you have another star out there and they're just getting hot. But it was never something we should have gotten extremely excited for with McDaniels and PJ putting the ball on the deck a lot more, because they were the ones that they needed to rely on. So hopefully that can become more consistent, and then you can have them get back to their roles. The injury is just the theme of the season right now. You want to end on this one?
One last thing on the injuries, because people have been asking me, when's LaMelo coming back? When is Gordon coming back? When is Cody Martin coming back? Who knows? I mean, this whole Terry Rozier situation, he's doubtful out. All of a sudden he's back. So expect the same thing with LaMelo. They're just not giving any indication as to when these players are going to be available. Suddenly they will be, and then we'll all be a little bit happier to watch Hornets basketball.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right. Thanks for making us your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NBA. Make sure Locked On NBA is a part of your daily lineup. You can get it anywhere you listen to your podcast, and it's just a 30-minute update on everything taking place within the association. Locked On NBA, your daily 30-minute update on everything taking place within the NBA. All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. We'll be back to recap the Washington Wizards and Charlotte Hornets game. That'll be Doug. Don't know if you're going to be bringing on your boy David Walker, somebody like that. You could just be going solo.
We'll see. Well, it might be a solo Sholo, might be a duo Sholo. We'll see.
All right, there's only one way to find out. Got to tune in. Locked On Hornets. Have a great rest of your day.